Once there was a beautiful girl named Ivana who lived with her grandmother in a quiet little city. Behind their home, they kept a charming garden where they grew fresh vegetables and sold them at the market. Their life was simple, but full of love and care. Along the road near their house, a thick forest stretched wide. In the middle of it stood an old, lonely cottage. From a distance, it looked abandoned, but strange stories surrounded it. For years, people believed a monster lived there, trapped long ago. No one dared to go near, but Ivana often gazed at the untouched field around the cottage. She imagined how rich the soil must be, how many vegetables she could grow there. If only I could plant our crops in that land, she thought. Grandmother and I would have a better life. When she shared her idea, her grandmother grew pale and fearful. Never think of going there, Ivana. That place is cursed. But Ivana's heart wouldn't rest. Night after night, she dreamed of the open field, full of growing vegetables and hope. One quiet night, after her grandmother had fallen asleep, Ivana slipped out, carrying her tools. She walked quickly through the trees and reached the field behind the cottage. Staying far from the house, hidden from the road, she began to work. For 3 nights, she cleared a patch of land, tilled the soil, planted seeds, and covered them gently with chaff. Then she waited. A month later, she returned. The seedlings had begun to sprout. She pricked them out with care and returned once a week to weed and water them. After months, the plants flourished. The first to ripen were the tomatoes, bright red, round, and juicy. One night she came to harvest them. But to her shock, half of the tomatoes were gone. She stood frozen angry, afraid, and confused. She picked what was left and returned home with a heavy heart. The next time she came, other vegetables had vanished too. Week after week, they were taken always just before she arrived. It must be the monster, Ivana thought, her fear growing. Finally, she decided to stay the whole night to catch whoever was stealing her crops. Under the silver light of the moon, Ivana hid behind the tall plants, her eyes wide and alert. Hours passed. Just before dawn, the silence was broken. A soft creak echoed from the cottage. A window slowly opened. To Ivana's shock, a young man handsome, with wild hair and torn, dusty clothes, stepped out, holding a basket. He moved carefully, as if afraid of being seen, and picked the ripest tomatoes. His face looked tired, almost lost. Ivana's fear turned to wonder. He's not a monster. He moved slowly, cautiously, with eyes that darted toward the trees. Every step seemed deliberate, like he was used to hiding, like he feared being seen. There was something haunting in his posture. Not the menace of a monster, but the sadness of someone lost. Ivana crouched low in the grass, her breath caught in her chest, but her fear had melted into something else. Curiosity, and then compassion. He's not a monster, she whispered to herself. He's just broken. The young man lingered in the garden for a moment, then turned back toward the cottage. His movements were quiet, almost ghost-like. As he reached the door, he paused and looked up at the sky, as if searching for a memory just out of reach. Then he disappeared inside. Ivana remained frozen in place, her heart pounding, not from fear anymore, but from the strange realization that the story the village had passed down for years was all wrong. This man wasn't a beast. He was something much sadder. What Ivana didn't know, what no one remembered, was that the man was once Prince Elian, the firstborn son of the late King Therion. A kind, wise-hearted boy, Elian had been groomed to lead the kingdom with fairness and strength. His people loved him. His advisors respected him. But his younger brother, Malric, had grown up in his shadow, always second, always compared. Over time, envy turned bitter, and as their father's health declined, Malric saw his chance. One morning, with a smile and false warmth, Malric invited Elian on a hunting trip in the eastern woods, a place thick with trees and silence. They rode deep into the forest, farther than they'd ever gone. There, Malric's plan was waiting. Masked robbers ambushed the prince, their attack swift and merciless. Elian fought back, but he was outnumbered. They beat him until he collapsed in the leaves, his crown lost, his name stripped from the future. Believing he would die, they left him there, broken, bleeding, and alone. But fate intervened. Rain fell. Time passed. And somehow, Elian lived. He awoke days later, battered and barely breathing, his memory fogged like morning mist. He stumbled through the woods, dragging his wounded body past trees he didn't recognize, until he came upon the cottage, a forgotten structure from an old royal hunting ground. With no recollection of who he was and no one searching for him, Elian remained. Over time, the vines grew thicker around the roof. His clothes turned to rags. His voice faded from disuse. And from the shadows of the village road, people saw only a lone, silent figure by the cottage, never coming near, never speaking. Whispers spread. Parents warned children. The tale of the forest monster was born. But he wasn't a monster. He was a fallen prince with no memory, no crown, and no one left to tell the truth. Until Ivana. Ivana, heart racing, slowly stepped out and approached the cottage. She knocked gently on the door. The man opened it, surprised. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, everything stood still. Ivana's voice trembled slightly as she asked, "Who are you?" The man stared at her, his dark eyes wide with confusion. He opened his mouth as if to answer, but no words came. Instead, he lowered his gaze and stepped aside, quietly inviting her in. Ivana hesitated at the doorway, unsure what she would find. But something in his presence, lonely, fragile, and almost childlike, pulled her forward. Inside, the cottage was dim but clean. A small fire flickered in the hearth. The room was simple. A worn wooden table, a few handmade chairs, and a pile of old blankets in the corner that served as a bed. Dried herbs hung from the rafters, and vegetables. Her vegetables were neatly arranged in baskets near the wall. Ivana turned to face him. "You've been living here alone all this time?" He nodded slowly. She asked again, "What's your name?" This time he looked troubled. He placed a hand over his heart and shook his head. "I don't remember," he whispered hoarsely. Ivana's heart softened. "I'm Ivana," she said, stepping closer. "I was afraid of you, but now I see. You're not a monster. You're just someone who's been hurt." The man looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, a single tear fell down his cheek. Over the following days, Ivana returned to the cottage at first cautiously, then with growing confidence. She brought food, clean clothes, and herbs from her grandmother's kitchen. She told him stories about her garden, the village market, and the silly things her neighbors used to say about the monster in the forest. Each time she came, the man seemed more alive. He began to speak more. Though he still couldn't remember his name or his past, he was gentle, clever, and deeply grateful. He laughed when Ivana told jokes, and sometimes he stared into the fire, lost in thought, as though memories were just beyond reach. One evening, as Ivana was helping him wash the dirt off some carrots, he suddenly froze. His eyes widened, his hands trembled. "Elian," he whispered. "My name was Elian." Ivana looked up, stunned. "Elian, that's your name?" He nodded slowly, then winced as a wave of emotion struck him. "I remember. My brother, he..." Elian clutched the edge of the table for support. "He betrayed me, left me for dead." Ivana rushed to his side and helped him sit. His memories came in fragments. A grand castle, a golden crown, a cold hunting trip, the robbers, the pain. He had once been Prince Elian, the rightful heir to the throne. His younger brother, jealous and ambitious, had arranged his death. But the robbers had failed. Elian had survived, wounded and lost, finding refuge in the abandoned cottage where he lived as a ghost, while the kingdom moved on. Ivana sat quietly, listening with awe and sorrow. "You're a prince," she whispered. "And all this time, people thought you were a monster." Elian looked at her, eyes shining. "And you saved me." In the weeks that followed, Ivana helped Elian regain his strength. She taught him how to work the garden, and he helped her rebuild a larger plot. The forest that had once seemed eerie became a haven of peace and growth. Eventually, Ivana told her grandmother the truth. At first, the old woman was terrified, but when she met Elian, her fear melted away. She saw the nobility in him, even under the rough clothing and sorrowful eyes. When Elian was strong enough, he decided to return to the kingdom and reveal the truth. Ivana insisted on going with him. The journey was long and filled with risk. The younger brother, now seated on the throne, had spread lies about Elian's fate. But when the people saw the true prince alive, and when Elian showed the old scar on his shoulder and spoke of places only he could know, many believed him. The kingdom stirred. A council of elders gathered, and after hearing Elian's story and seeing the deceit in the younger brother's rule, they removed the false king and declared Elian the rightful heir. But Elian was no longer the same man he had once been. He stood in front of the cheering crowd, Ivana at his side, and said, "I do not want a kingdom for power. I want to rebuild what was broken, to be a ruler who listens, who heals." And so he did. Ivana became more than a queen. She became a symbol of courage, wisdom, and hope. Together, they turned the palace into a place of compassion. The poor were welcomed. The sick were healed. And in the royal gardens, vegetables grew in neat rows, just as they had behind Ivana's cottage. And deep in the forest, the old cottage was preserved, no longer feared, but honored. A place where a lost prince had been found. They lived, loved, and ruled long and well. And every spring, as the first tomatoes ripened, Ivana smiled, remembering the night it all began.